Hello, everyone. Thank you for listening to another episode of the Intuition Revolution. And today I have the pleasure of having Katie Allen as a guest. So, Katie, can you introduce yourself to our listeners?
Absolutely. So my name is Katie. I am a certified health and life coach, and I help women learn to love themselves and love their bodies. And I'm Canadian, and I am based in Australia right now. I am tanned. It is the summer, even though I know, Ange, for you, it is cold and it's the
Yeah.
winter.
Snow forecast today, but nothing like where Canada anyway. It's like
Yeah.
just a little nothingness. Right. And how long have you been doing what you're doing?
I have been a coach since 2017 is when I
Hmm.
started. Yeah, and I started with health coaching, and then I'd say probably 8 or 9 months in, I realized that all of my health coaching skills could be used with sort of like body image and self-love stuff. And it's because that was my own personal story that I was really passionate about. I very quickly transitioned into that.
So you've already answered my question, what led you into that? But tell me more about your personal story, because that's what led you to that. Yeah.
Yeah. So I guess it depends how much detail you want, but basically,
You can give us as much detail as you want or as little. Is entirely up to you. But
okay.
I would say, let's. How much do you think people who are listening to us would like to know
Hmm.
at this
Hmm.
point?
So, I mean, I think it's important to say, I've always been in a bigger body. I was a fat kid. I was the fat kid. I was bullied as a young child. I was incredibly insecure as a teenager. I felt just awful. I used to, believe it or not, I used to wear big baggy clothes and no makeup. And I used to try to hide, not be seen. And I was very quiet, a little bit different to how I am now. I was very, very quiet. And I was really ashamed of who I was. I was ashamed of what I looked like. I mean, I grew up watching my mom go on, Weight Watchers and all these different diets and struggle with her body. And so I sort of took all that on myself. And in my 20s, I got into some really unhealthy relationships and some really bad habits. And sort of through my own journey, I learned to love myself and sort of accepted my body and learned to appreciate my body. And it's a relationship, right? So it's ongoing, it's a lifelong thing. But the fact that I now, as a woman who is still in a sort of a larger body, larger than what society would like, or larger than what society says is like normal or desirable. The fact that I can look at myself and really truly say, like, I love myself and I love my body. That's a powerful thing. And I want that for everybody. We all deserve it.
Absolutely. What would you
Mm.
say was the turning point in that relationship with your body? What was the awakening point, or what was when you started loving yourself, no matter what?
I would say I don't think there was one. I think there's sort of been like some hiccups that sort of propelled me forward on that journey. I would say that one was I lost my mom when I was 20 years old. She died unexpectedly. She wasn't sick or anything. It was very sudden. And that was, of course, hugely traumatic and life changing. Um, but it also taught me very young that life is short. And it taught me very young that you don't get to redo things and we don't get to go back in time and change things, and all you have is now. So that was the beginning for me. And then in my late 20s, when I would have been 27, I bought a plane ticket to travel to Australia solo as a backpacker. And I always wanted to do it. And one day I just took the leap and I did it. And that trip taught me how strong I am, how resilient I am. I did things that I never thought I would do, went snorkeling on the Great Barrier Reef and hiked up, waterfalls, and just did all these things in my body that I want. Even though I look different from everybody else, my body's really amazing and it can do all of these things. And so there was sort of, I don't know that there was like one thing that was about my body. I was in a really nasty relationship for a while with somebody who did not respect me and did not see me and did not see me as worthy. So I think part of it actually was a bit of rebellion against that too. Like, I am worthy and I do deserve to be seen. So yeah, it's a few things.
The things we have to go through sometimes to wake up, don't we?
Yeah,
I'm sorry
absolutely.
for your loss, for your mom. That must have been really, really hard,
Thank
especially
you. Yeah.
at such a tender age.
Yes.
But I admire you that you've been able to see the gift in it.
Yeah.
I have a
Yeah.
cousin, not that I'm going to detract from you because this is all about you, but I have a cousin who lost his dad when he was 17. And
Mhm.
almost within months of his dad's death, he was able to tell me, actually, I know this is a good thing because if my dad was still alive, I wouldn't be able to be me. And I was like
Mhm.
in awe of him. I was a couple of years older than him. He's my little cousin. I was like, I can't believe this guy, this I would say child at 17 is
Yeah.
so wise. I just looked at him and I was like, oh my God. And I'm not saying this to compare anyone to him and you, or for people who have not found the gold in I suppose, or the diamond in the rubbish, but
Yeah.
it's still something that still, yeah, I'm still in awe of people who are able to do that. So
Yeah. I always like to say that I only had my mom for 20 years, but though she was amazing. She was my best friend. She was my support system. She was my role model. We could not have had a better relationship, I don't think, if we tried. And I mean, some people have their mothers for 60 years and they have horrible relationships the whole time. And I know, I've heard you speak about it. And
yeah.
I mean, I only had my mom for such a short time, but I could not have had a better mother. And I mean, yes, it was absolutely horrible losing her. And I'm so lucky that I had her. So, I mean, I
Mm.
can't, if I had to choose one or the other, I'd choose what I got, really.
Well, I actually know I chose my mother, but that's for a whole other story. Because I can see the blessing of having had a mother that wasn't mothering, that wasn't nurturing. Because just like with your relationship, that was pretty horrid, it taught me a
Mhm.
lot about what I didn't want in a relationship, what I didn't want to be as a mother. And
Yeah.
it enabled me to be an even better mother and to have compassion for other people who have not been in healthy relationship with their parents. But yeah, let's move on because that's, again, it's not about me. I like digressions though, it's still interesting, I'm sure. So the next question I love to ask my guests, and I want you to be completely candid and honest here, is do you consider yourself intuitive? And there's no right or wrong answer here.
um, okay, so my initial answer really wants to be no. And I also am I'm in the process of discovering that. But innately, if you just say, if I had to pick yes or no, I would actually say no.
Yep. And for me, for decades, it was exactly the same.
Mhm.
Exactly the same. So I can relate, and I'm sure a lot of our listeners would relate as well. Because somehow, I don't know if that's the case for you, but I used to put intuitive people and psychic people on a pedestal, like so far, far away from me. Like they could do everything. They could talk to angels. They could see things. They could everything. It was like, pfft. And I thought they were also perfect people, which they're not. So there's all that story going on. And but what I want to say to this, even though not to you, because I know we know that you've started your journey in recovering or rediscovering your intuition. But what I want to say is that we're all born intuitive. So it stays there. It might be buried deep, 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 deep inside because our logical mind took over completely, because that's the only thing that has been nurtured through all these years of being, education and parenting and everything. It's the mind. It's only the mind and the logical and the intellect that is fed, and sometimes even not our bodies are looked after that well. It's just everything is about thinking and how well you think and how far you can go in your studies and all that. So no
Yeah.
wonder our intuition is like bottom of the pile, and it's like a muscle that hasn't been used in decades for us, isn't it?
Yeah. Absolutely. Or if we are using it, we don't even know we're using it.
Yeah,
I think for myself, I think that's actually what a lot of it is. But
yeah.
yeah, it's like if you don't use it, or if you don't consciously use it, how do you know how? And you don't know how strong you are either.
I like this. I don't know if you've seen Wally, the cartoon, but at one point, they're in this big spaceship, and because they've rubbished the whole Earth, and they have to leave, and they all have these little hovering seats, so they don't have to walk anymore. And
Mm.
so their legs, after generation, they don't have much legs and arms, or they don't need to use their muscles. So they're literally like wobbly people on these hovering seats, and they just order things that come to them. They don't have to do much to get anything. And I liken it to the intuition, because if we had been put on these seats and hover all around and never have to use our intuition, of course we wouldn't be able to use our legs. And at one point in the film, one of the characters, these little almost legless and armless characters, falls off their seat and they can't do anything anymore. And I can't remember exactly what happens in that scene, but that's exactly how I feel about intuition, that we've been put in these wheelchairs where we've been told, don't use your intuition, don't be ridiculous. We have these hover things. It's no use you're using your intuition. You're being just retarded or whatever, not maybe not retarded, but like backwards. The
Yeah.
future is this hovering board. Don't use your legs. And as a consequence, we have them, but we don't know how to use them, and they're very, very weak.
Yeah.
So I often have this image pop in my mind whenever I talk about intuition, because I think it's so vivid and it's so true. And if we had in our education system um, teachings about intuition, then we would be much rounded people. We would be fully blossoming, like intuition
Yeah.
and intelligence combined. I call it intuitive intelligence anyway. So that was a bit of a digression again.
I love the visual though, because I think sometimes intuition is one of those, for many people, it's very intangible.
Yeah,
Like it is hard to sort of put your finger on. But I have seen that movie and I do know what you're talking about. I remember the scene from Wally where the guy fell off the board, that
yes.
is like a chair. But I agree with you. I really do. It's like we've just been told, oh, you don't need it. Oh, you don't need it. Oh no, just use
Or
your brain.
ridiculed, plainly ridiculed. And I
Yeah.
know as a child, for me, because I could see through people basically, which got me into so much trouble with adults in particular. I could see through them, and my mum was the first person who hated me because of that, because I could see through her and she couldn't stand it. And so everywhere I went, I was ridiculed because the adults didn't want to be caught out by me looking at them. Even I didn't say a word, they knew I knew. And that's
Yeah.
how it started for me to be, like, don't use your legs because you're going to show me that I'm doing something wrong here, and I don't want you to say that. Or but if you think about the number of times that a parent will be sad and they're telling their kids, no, I'm not sad, don't be silly, I'm okay. Or when we lie all the time, even if it's a white lie, and even if it's because we think it's not appropriate. If But children can feel it, even if they don't, they can feel it because they can feel energy. And then they learn not to take cues from people's energy and rather take cues from their words. And that's how they get super confused. And that's how later on in life they can be manipulated mentally into things by people who are manipulative. That's what puts them in danger. That's my feeling, that if every child had their intuition tuned in, turned on, and that they honored it and trusted it, I don't think child abuse could exist anymore, honestly,
Hmm.
or it would be reduced dramatically, because they would
Yeah.
feel there's something wrong, but they would feel validated in it, if that makes any sense.
Yeah. Yeah.
Anyway, that's going to be on the heavy side of intuition, but I still think it's super, super important. And I remember, like, my mum told me that when I was a little baby, one of my aunts, if she literally walked into the room, I would start crying as a baby. And I never liked that aunt. Forever, ever. And I would always kind of cringe away from her until I was in my 30s. I still didn't like her, but I started to understand her better. And it's actually only a few years before she died that we made friends, so to speak. But it's because I could see how her interaction with her own kids as well, and it made me super uncomfortable.
Mm.
Um, you know, she had a difficult childhood, so she was also a difficult mum, but I could feel the energy right away. I knew it. And even without, before I could put words onto it. But if you're constantly told off for it, and I think a lot of kids are, then you switch it off or you ignore it or you don't want to hear from it. And then it creates this cycle where you only hear it if it's negative, and and you don't want to, because then that means that you're going to know something that either you're not supposed to know, or something bad that's going to happen that you don't really want to hear about. So
Right.
it's this vicious circle. It's almost like our society is creating this taboo, and at the same time, anyway, yeah. So we are here to change this with the intuition revolution. Let's do it. So my question for you is, how do you receive your intuition? Even though
Um,
you don't have to say you're intuitive, but you still are. So how do you receive it? How do you think you receive it?
for me, it's just a knowing. So I know, like I've heard you speak about the clairs. So there's, like some people see things or some people hear things, or I've never experienced anything like that. For me, it feels like it's just coming from my gut.
Mm.
It's just it's just an internal feeling, is I guess the best way I can describe
Yeah,
it.
and a knowing is very valid. There is actually a form of intuition that is just knowing, and you don't know how you know it, but you still know it,
Yeah.
and that can be very confusing as well. And hard to spot, because you think you're making things up. How do I know this? If your mind kicks in, then it's going to start to try to deconstruct it and say,
Well,
well, yeah,
I think that's exactly what's happened with me. It's you deconstruct it, you start questioning it, you think, no, this is just my old fears. As a coach, I can tell you, especially understanding how we create stories and belief systems, I'm like, no, this is just some story, this is just some belief system, instead of just witnessing it and accepting it. So it's like this whole complex thing happening inside my head.
yeah. And I
Yeah.
can, I'm a knower as well. So I know exactly. I mean, I doubt is my kryptonite, and I live with it constantly. Even now, having 15 years experience in the field, I still question and doubt my intuition every day.
Yeah.
That knowing thing. But what I love as well about it is that I know it's really annoying, but I know that's how I can help people who experience that the best. And that's the majority of people. The majority of people don't get any of the clairs, they just know.
Yeah.
And that's why I want to start this revolution, so that people know that even if they know, and my kids do that, they say, oh, I just know. And a parent normally would say, no, you don't know. Prove it. Or, where does that come from? But I just let them, I honor them and say, okay, show me.
Yeah.
Maybe I want to know what you know.
Right. Right. Oh, your kids are going to be so like, they're starting at such an advantage. Having that as just like, it's just accepted. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Really.
And thank you. It's a balancing act as well, because I don't want them to be 100% intuitive. I don't want to go the other way, the pendulum going full whack. So I want them to use their mind, but also to tune into their bodies, and then make it work together. So
Yeah.
it's never been done. It's never been done in my house. So I don't know if I'm doing it right, but I'm trying. That's all I can say. Right. So you have at least one, if not two, powerful stories related to your intuition that you're
Yeah.
happy to share today. So which one would you like to start with first?
Um, let's start with when I didn't listen to my intuition. Because as somebody who does not identify as intuitive, it wasn't until long afterwards where I looked back and I went, oh, that's what that was. And so to tell you the story, so this happened last year. It was in 2020, sort of right near sort of the beginning of, the pandemic and the world shutting down. And I had been looking for mindset support. I knew that in my business, I was sort of struggling with some mindset issues, and I was looking to hire a coach. I wanted to work with somebody to overcome some of my limiting beliefs. And so I was just sort of keeping an eye on things. And there was somebody who I had been aware of on social media for quite some time, who had really like strong marketing is a best way for me to put it. Very masculine, very in your face, very sort of pushy. But she also talked about how she got her clients were having these great results, and she was a mindset coach. That's specifically what she did. Her clients were having these great results and these big aha moments, and we talked, and I just had such a gut feeling that I should not work with this person, that her tactics weren't for me, and that this pushiness wasn't for me. But all her words, all her marketing, what did its job, and I signed up, and I ended up working with her. I did a 3-month one-on-one coaching program. It was the most expensive one-on-one coaching program I have ever spent money on, and got no results. Like nothing, no difference at all. Our coaching calls were like, she's a lovely person, and I would never badmouth her to anybody. But it was kind of just like chatting with a friend. There was no sort of powerful coaching conversations. She didn't help me rewrite those belief stories. She didn't really sort of do much as a coach. And it was only afterwards that I looked back and I went, you knew that this was going to happen, but you didn't listen.
This can be painful lessons, yeah.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
So you have invested quite a lot of money in your intuition already then, haven't you? By not listening to it.
I suppose I have that way. I suppose I have. Yeah. Yeah. But I think like I needed to learn that lesson, because even though I may not have gotten the mindset support that I thought I was investing in, what I got was listen to your gut, because you know the answer.
Yeah.
So
it's a price tag. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a big price for that, but hey.
Yeah. Yeah. But then I think it led you to other experiences, didn't it?
It did.
Trusting yourself more. And how valuable is trust?
Well, yeah, I mean, that's priceless, really, at the end of the day. And even though, I know we're talking about business and entrepreneurship and all of this, of course, these lessons extend all throughout life. They apply to everything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what was your second experience then?
So the second experience is when I did listen to my intuition, and this one has a much happier. So in January of 2021, last month before we're recording this, I created a summit called the Body Peace Summit. And this came about because back when I first started my coaching training, it was 2017. And one of my coaches at my school, she said, you know what? You would be great. You should host a summit. You would be so good interviewing people. And you're like, you just have the personality for it. And you have this and you have that. And of course, at that time, I literally didn't know anything. I think I had like, 2 lessons on how to be a coach. I didn't understand anything. And I just sort of froze and I went, I can't do that. I can't do that. I never forgot about it, but it just got put on the back burner. And then it was probably September, maybe October of 2020. And I was chatting with a friend who also she's an intuitive business coach. She actually works in very similar ways to you. And we were just chatting and she said, Katie, have you ever thought about creating a summit? And I was like, kind of. Why? She said, I'm getting a feeling. It just came up. I'm just getting a feeling. I felt like I needed to say that. And okay, that's fine. And we carried on with our conversation. But once she said it out loud again, it's like it flicked a switch inside of me. Something said, you need to do this. You need to do this. And it didn't make any sense logically. If I just used my brain, I never would have done it.
Yeah.
I mean, all of my sort of other business training and my mentors and everybody says that doing a summit is sort of when you're farther down the track and you're doing these things. But I just knew. I just thought, you know what? I need to do this. I want to do this. And from start to finish, within 4 weeks, I had planned out the entire summit, worked out all of the tech, I interviewed all of my speakers ahead of time. So it wasn't run live. I had done all the interviews, done all of the editing, put the entire platform together, done the sales page within 4 weeks. Like, it was like this monumental thing, and it was fun. Like, I loved doing that. I woke up every morning thinking, like, what do I get to do today? How else do I get to bring this summit to life today? And I had my goal was to have 125 women attend the. We had a 4-day. It wasn't really live, but it was like the launch where it was sort of rolled out. And my goal was 125 women. And even that, I felt like, oh, is this too big of a goal? Anyway, in the end, we ended up getting 155 was our final number.
Whoa.
And everything went off. It could not have gone better. And all the feedback that I got was positive, and everybody loved it. And I've had so many people tell me that, it's changed their lives.
Honestly, I've signed up for it, and I bought the pass, and I can tell you, no one could ever organize that in 4 weeks. No one else but you, because you followed your intuition. And if you don't mind me sharing, this is how I wrote my first book. I had never written a book in English, alone publish it. That it was 2009, and I went to see a friend who does readings, like I did back then, and she said, I was coming to her because I had written a book in English but not published it. It was just like in my mind, because I had a 10-year writer's block, and I had just started writing my book, and I wanted to make sure I was on the right track. And she said to me, no, this is not the book you're supposed to write. You need to write a book about slimming, which I had no interest in, like zero interest in slimming or helping people with slim or feeling better about their bodies or anything like that. And she said it was September, and she said, and it has to be out by December. And it was. So I can really relate. And back then I didn't think it was my intuition, because it's someone else told me. But the difference, what I can hear and what you're saying, is that the first time you weren't ready, the second time you were ready, and it's almost like your intuition gave you an outside sign from someone else, and then you knew in your body by hearing it, I have to do this.
Yeah.
Just like I knew when that book was mentioned to me, I have to do this, even though I didn't want to, which is a bit different than you, because you did want to, but I didn't want to. I was like, no. No, this is a big fat no. But then I drove back home on the way from my friend, and I thought, okay, I do trust her. I do trust, the universe, a bigger purpose, or whatever. And then I could see from the energy, just like what you've just explained to me, that the universe conspired for this book to happen. And I literally bumped into 2 ladies who I had as clients, who were English teachers, who could help me. Do you have a commitment with time? I'm just checking.
No, I'm sorry. There's a very loud frog sitting on the window right beside me, and I'm trying to see who he is, because I don't know if you can hear him in the microphone, but he's.
No, I can't hear the frog. But maybe there's a sign for you there. I don't know. Look at it later. And so, the universe conspired, because I had 2 clients that I was actually doing volunteer work for, who had cancer, who happened to, one was actually a published author, and the other one was an English teacher, which I absolutely needed, because English is not my native language. And then I bumped into another lady who had published her book, who gave me all the details, because back then it was much harder to publish books in 2009. So I can see exactly, this is a parallel story to mine with my book. And yet, I want to say this just to see what your take is on your experience. I was highly disappointed by the results, because after all this happening so well, I didn't know how to sell my book. And it felt like almost like, what do you say? There's a word for this. Like, well, why did I do this? What's the point? The results that I got didn't match what I expected to happen, because I had a very set idea of, oh, well, if I follow my intuition, this and this and this and this and this would happen. And that's not how it works. Sometimes we get something that doesn't look quite like what we think we would, but there's something much better coming along the way that we haven't seen yet. So after one of these events, you can actually have a massive slump in your experience mindset or whatever it is. And I've had it repetitively since. So now I know how it works. And the slump is not my intuition. The slump is, what did I expect from it? What were my expectations, and were they realistic, or were they too tunnel visioned?
Yeah.
Because, well, I want to hear what you have, how you feel about that. Just, I'm curious.
I would say very similar to you. Yeah,
Yeah.
very, very similar. I had this idea going into the summit that I would, because the summit, like, it's available evergreen, right? Like, there's an all access pass that I have. And I thought, oh, people are just going to see the value in it and they're going to love it. And then I'm going to sell, I didn't have a number, but I'm going to sell a whole bunch of these passes and I'm going to make money back. And then I was also selling a group program off the back of that. And I was hoping to get 10 women into that program. I'm going to easily fill that program, and I'm going to do this and I'm going to do this. And it ended, and I've sold a few of the passes, but not many. And that group program never ended up coming to fruition. And so, yes, very similar of like, what do I do now?
So, and this is also for our listeners, because I think it's really important. If you have that sort of experience, then you might think, oh, I don't want to follow my intuition anymore. This is such hard. It wasn't hard work, actually. It was a lot of fun. Same for me. Writing that book was so fun. I mean, it didn't even feel like effort.
Yeah.
So I want our listeners to understand that our intuition sees the bigger picture. So you want short-term results, but your intuition knows you can have much better long-term results that is going to lead to something that is going to lead to something else. Like, for example, with my book, I didn't know how to sell books. I didn't know how to sell anything. I had no ideas about sales. But was it 3 years later, I signed up an agent for it, like in an instant. And then again, it had a disappointing result, but it was because I was supposed to learn another lesson and another lesson and another lesson. And that's what made me today. So running your business with intuition, not to say that you should ignore your intellect, it has to be both. It has that sort of unpredictable quality to it that you have to release control. And if anybody says, oh, I don't want to do that. I've run a business before. It was super effective. It was super successful. I had loads of money. The option's not here anymore for that. Because with COVID, we've completely shifted the energy of the planet. And now only the businesses that are tuned in, tapped on, and that are here to serve, that have a bigger purpose, almost like a spiritual purpose, are going to thrive. So you might have seen a lot of people who were successful in the past that are going to experience something completely different, because we're all asked to recalibrate. And so we're almost like the pioneers of that wave. And it can be difficult, because we can beat ourselves up about the fact that we're not as successful as others and why don't we get the results. But I know that from now on, it's the only way anyway. Anything else will just be a short-term gain rather than a long-term one, if that makes any sense. So, and that doesn't mean at all that we're not going to have a lot of success from everything that we do in 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks, whatever it is. It's just that we have to be in this energy of release, of releasing control, and of trusting, and of having faith, and not hang on to the results to get that. And it's so frustrating. I don't know if it's the same for you. But at the same time, look how much fun you had. And you don't know where the next step's going to be, and what it just, you have to tune back in and ask your intuition. So what next? And what next now? Does that make sense? I don't know if I've sold intuition too well to our listeners, but I think it makes a lot of sense to me.
I think so. I want to say, well, first off, you used the word recalibrate. After this project, you have to like recalibrate. And I really like that word, because I feel like I am literally doing that right now. I'm coming off that summit. It was very recent. It was 5 weeks ago, 6 weeks ago, something like that. Not very long, maybe not even that long. so I feel like I'm very much just sort of, I'm learning the lessons, and and I can already see in my mindset, in my goal setting, in my actions that I'm taking, how that summit has changed how I'm operating. It's changed how I'm speaking. It's changed my messaging, which I know will change my business. So I 100% see the recalibration happening. And you also said that the trusting is the hardest part. And I have to tell you, that is the hardest thing ever, ever.
Mm,
Just trusting it. I think a lot of people use the word surrender, which sometimes that feels really scary to me, but at the same time, I think I understand, because it
mm.
is just trusting. It's trusting the process, trusting the timing. And I think, speaking from my experience, it's a scary thing to trust, to relinquish control. And especially when, we're talking about business and money, and it's like,
Mm.
I have to, I need to pay my bills.
Yeah.
So how much do I trust, and how much do I just power through and do things? And I don't know if, you can, I'm sure you can speak to this a lot, but I
I,
feel like
I,
that's the ultimate challenge.
I want to speak to it briefly because we're nearly on the hour, or not quite actually, uh, because your financial needs are always going to be met, but maybe not the way you think. And that's how it works with business and intuition, or intuition in business, is that temporarily the money might come from not your business, and that might like rub against your ego, because your ego wants you to have the money in and not have to depend on a loan or this or that or the other. But ultimately you will get what you want. It's just a question of divine timing and trusting, because I can see now back to the time when I wanted to be a best-selling author with my book, that I wasn't ready for the best-selling author life. I can
Mm,
see it so clearly. 10 years, hindsight is such a wonderful thing. So what I wanted wasn't really suited for what I needed. So I got what I needed, which was a beautiful book that was actually acknowledged by, a powerful agent as being professionally produced and amazing, which is something that, as an author, is probably the most important thing, because I'm not a native speaker in English. I had never written a book. I didn't even want to write a book initially. I'm like more of one of those reluctant authors, but it was important for me, for my inner peace, to know that actually it was worth me spending the time writing, that I had something valid to say, and that I said it in a way that was receivable by readers, rather than, there's so many, everybody can write a book nowadays, and I think that writing a good book is really important for me.
yeah.
So I
Yes.
did get what I needed, not what I wanted. But at the same time, I know that what I wanted would have been destructive for my life. So, but I can only see that with hindsight. But I can also tell you that my needs have always been met, even though my ego has not liked the way it was, if that makes any sense.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I want to say as well, as entrepreneurs, even if we didn't use our intuition, entrepreneurship is always about experimenting, tweaking, learning the lesson, doing it again. So what intuition adds to the mix is just trusting yourself over experts. And that's really important, because we're all here to create a business that works for us to start with, where we
Yeah.
serve the people that we're supposed to serve, and we're not supposed to follow someone else's cookie cutter model, which a lot of people try to sell us. And I know that for a lot of them, it's from a genuine place of, I'm excited, I made it work for me, it can work for you. But I'm going to say, no, 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 it never works exactly for another person exactly like that, because we're so different. We have different goals, we have different preferences, we have different clients, we have different business models, we have different skills. Like your zone of genius is to organize summits. I can see that, because the quality of the summit you put together, I would say probably people wouldn't believe you that you've organized it in such a short period of time. I know my zone of genius, one of them is to write books. I can write books at fast speed that people actually are really good, and people can't believe I've written it in such a short period of time. So we all have something that we can do that other people can't do. And even though I can do webinars and you can do webinars, or you might be able to do a 5-day challenge, it's not you, it's not how you operate. So you have to find through your intuition what is right for you.
Yeah.
And if I can almost feed back to you on your experience with your summit, it was your first summit and it was awesome. Imagine how the second one's going to look like when you know better how to sell at the end of it, when you can refine your message and all that. So, and that's the entrepreneur in me that would say that.
Yeah.
But it only happened because you followed your intuition. So this is such a powerful story. As powerful as the first one, I feel.
Yeah. I think it's, I love that it's all about experimenting. And to me, intuition is so much part of that, because why do we experiment? We experiment because there's something that's like, oh, what about that? Try it, get curious. And I mean, in my entrepreneurial journey, I have, I think so many of us, we see people online, maybe we work with different coaches, we do programs, and some people have really resonated with me and some people really have not. And there are some, some people are very strong. You have to do things this way. You have to do webinars because they're the highest converting and they are this and they are this, and they'll give you all the facts. But if you sit down and you do, and I have done webinars, I don't mind them, but there's nothing exciting about them for
Exactly.
me.
Exactly. It's about the excitement. It's about the excitement. And I had the same thing. I get so excited doing my challenges, and it might not work for someone else. It's the joy that we feel is as important as anything else. If we follow the joy, then we are way ahead of everyone else because people can feel it.
Yeah.
And it's a real magnet for other people. How many people do you feel have joy in their business and spread the joy? So that's, oh gosh, I'm loving this conversation. So I would like to know if you could share with our audience where people can find you, and your wonderful summit, because the pass is still available for purchase, is it? Yeah.
The pass is still available. So you can find me. My website is katieallen.co. Nice and simple. And there's a work with me tab, and the summit is in there. And then I'm on social media, Facebook and Instagram, mostly just Katie Allen Coaching.
Okay. And you have a wonderful podcast as well?
Oh, and I have a podcast. Thank you. Thank you. And I have a podcast called Self-Love Ignited. And it's where I interview women and talk to them about their stories of how they learn to love themselves.
It's a wonderful podcast. That's actually how I found you, I think. Yeah, I think that is. I listened to your podcast and I fell in love with it. Yeah.
And you are one day, when I can pin you down, you are going to be a guest on my podcast.
I would love that. I would really love that. Although just like you, I don't feel I'm quite there, but maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm wrong.
Yeah.
My last question, which I ask all my guests, and I love it, is what would you say to someone who's afraid to use their intuition in their business?
Experiment. Have fun with it. I think business can sort of be whatever we make it. And if you make it really very serious and very strict and very regimented, then that is what your life is going to be. But if you choose to get curious and have fun and experiment and follow your joy, like you said, you never know what you're going to find. And then that energy is going to go through your whole life. Really.
Thank you so much, Katie. It has been such a pleasure to have you on the podcast. I want to also thank all our listeners for getting to the end of this wonderful podcast as well. And I'll see you again for another episode soon. Bye for now. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.